Can you see the agenda, Eric?
I can, yes. Peter and John and Bob and Bertrand. Okay, so the whole board's all here.
This is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Eric?
Yes,
Can.
Peter.
I can.
Oh, good.
Okay, all board members are here. We ready, Eric?
I believe we are.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's a regular board meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District for Saturday, November 13th. It's 8 a.m. Peter, may we have the roll call, please?
Sure. Rickert,
Here.
Epstein,
Here.
Schroeder,
Here.
Perot,
Yeah,
Dornberg here, all present and accounted for.
Thank you. Eric, any announcements today?
Just would ask everyone if they'd like to speak to use the raise your hand function. And this meeting obviously is being recorded and all votes will be taken via roll call.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Are there any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar?
yes, I would like to discuss one item,
Okay,
which is D, pre-authorized teleconference meeting.
so we'll pull that one. Okay. And any other corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to comments from the audience. There's an opportunity for people to make comments on any topic that's not on today's agenda. Just raise your hand if you'd like to speak.
I see someone clapping, but I think that means they're trying to raise their hand. So Lisa Martin.
Hi, Lisa.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your time this morning. I am the president of Sun Meadows 2 Homeowners Association, and I just wanted to request that the board look at the written comments that I submitted and take action on them. We are concerned that the snow removal costs that we're being allocated isn't as equitable, or the allocation method that's being used isn't as equitable as it could be. So just to follow along from, well, let me just back up. Our snow removal costs over the last 2 years have essentially doubled each year. And last year I requested an explanation, didn't really get any. This year they doubled again. So they went from about 1,700 up to 8,100 over these past 2 years. And this year I pushed for some explanations. And what I learned was that you've changed the landmark. We weren't notified in advance that you were planning to change the landmarks or making any changes that would significantly impact our snow removal. And so we didn't have any warning that our costs would significantly increase. And we didn't have any opportunity to comment on your proposed change. So number one, we'd like to ask the KMPUD look at your process going forward to, when you're going to make changes, please provide advance notice. Please provide a public comment period so that folks can review the changes and provide feedback to them. So that's one point. We've been working with our fellow Sun Meadows owners or HOAs to discuss snow removal. We note that Sun Meadows 1 has been paying to remove, repair, repave, and restripe Vale and Kirkwood Mountain Realty properties for years without compensation. We're trying to fix that. I know that the KMPUD has primarily been, or is primarily allocating by ownership. However, these other areas were owned by other entities and the cost was being allocated to Sun Meadows 1. Sun Meadows 1, Eric and his team have recently provided a new contract for Sun Meadows 1, which has reduced their costs from $8,100 to $4,500. And that's just including their ownership areas. But if you look at a map, and I don't know, is it possible for me to share my screen here, or is that not allowed?
I don't know, actually.
Uh,
Well, I think it would be allowed, but
if you don't mind, I'll share my screen because a picture might be helpful.
Sure.
So let me just bring up the picture here. So this is kind of showing the Sun Meadows ownership areas. And the original contract, Sun Meadows 1, was being charged for, included the red, the purple, the two purples, and the two greens, and half of this square. The revised contract, which was $8,100, and these purple and red areas of land aren't owned by Sun Meadows 1. The revised contract that you sent this week has just the two green areas and half of the aqua driveway into the garage entrance. Sun Meadows 2 has this blue area and half of the garage. And we're being charged $8,100 because you're including all of this area, which is the snow dump. So we have the same or maybe even fewer parking spots than Sun Meadows 1. We have the same half a garage entrance, and we share this road, or part of this road, but we're getting hit with a more significant cost. And the snow dump is a common area, as is the road. So that's one point. The other point is we believe that this entrance here is used by multiple Sun Meadows entities, not just Sun Meadows 1, which is here, and Sun Meadows 2, but it's also used by 3 and 4. So if I show you a brief map of the parking spots inside the garage, this is the entrance from under Cornice Grill. And this is the entrance that we're talking about here on the road between Base Camp and Sun Meadows. Both parties enter through either entrance, or can enter through either entrance, but this entrance over here is height restricted. If you have a large pickup truck or an SUV, you can't get in here. And it's also very, there's a ramp here and there's a ramp here. It's not necessarily the easiest entrance to get into. Like if your parking spots are over here or over here, it's a hard angle to make. So, we think that Sun Meadows 3-4 should, share in the cost of this entrance. Another point, let me show, maybe this picture would be helpful. This entrance here, we have a shared deck, which we divide the cost of plowing out between the 5 entities, Vale, Sun Meadows 1, 2, 3, and 4. The snow gets pushed off over onto this entrance. So this entrance, is used by all the entities, with the possible exception of Vale. Vale has parking spots only if they own a unit. But the snow that comes off the deck gets pushed here and then has to be pushed up here. So there's an increased cost to plow this entrance versus this entrance. There's the cost to plow the road, which is getting allocated to these 3 entities, and 3-4 is not getting allocated any of that cost, nor is Vale or Kirkwood Mountain Realty. And there's snow coming in from the road and potentially the lodge. I haven't stood out there and watched, but I've seen it coming in from the road and getting pushed up in here to this common snow area. So, what we'd like to ask is either have some compensation for the snow coming in from the outside, because it not only increases our snow removal costs, it increases our pavement costs, because there's wear and tear for the snow plows going up and down the road all night long. And, over the course of the year, that wears down the pavement, and then we are stuck with the cost to repair it. So we get hit in 2 ways. So we'd like to see this road and the garage be a shared cost. And we'd also like some cost sharing coming in from wherever it's coming in out here.
Lisa, may I interrupt? So this is, I think you've made your concerns really clear, which I appreciate very much. We can't discuss the merits of what you're, because it's not on our agenda. But what I think I'd like to do is ask Eric and Peter, who's the chair of our operations committee, to discuss whether this should be placed on the operations committee agenda for discussion and a possible recommendation to the board.
That seems appropriate to me. I think she has some valid concerns. It's pretty complicated. There's so many different entities involved there at Sun Meadows and Base Camp. And yeah, I think we could put that on our agenda for our next meeting, don't you, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, great. And that's on November 24th.
2 Wednesdays from now.
Yeah, so Lisa, make sure you have that on your calendar.
November 24th,
Yeah, I think it's
not Thanksgiving,
That's a Wednesday. Thanksgiving's on
a
Thursday.
Wednesday. Okay.
I think it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the day before Thanksgiving.
I totally concur with everything being said here. I'd just like to add one tidbit is it'd be great to have some feedback from the other Sun Meadow as well and actually get them involved because it looked like there is some share work to be done here.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I have made a proposal to do some like a joint agreement for the whole area. And I believe I have support from Sun Meadows 1 and Vale. We are waiting for Sun Meadows 3 and 4 to have their board meeting, which is on Monday, to see if they will agree. And this would be kind of a preliminary cost sharing for just this year. And then we'd work over the next 9 months to get to a more refined agreement that takes into account, how much land or how many parking spots or whatever formula we agree upon to allocate cost. We would have more time to discuss, but we've made a simple divide by 5 proposal that is the way we're doing the deck today and have been doing for many years. But it would help if some of the cost, particularly for the road, if you guys could pull that off onto, the entities outside of Sun Meadows and Base Camp off of our plate, because, we're essentially asking Sun Meadows 3-4 to shift, from $700. If I could share my screen just really briefly one more time.
Lisa, can we just defer this to the operations committee?
Sure,
Because
we
we really can't discuss it, and we can't discuss the merits of it. And I know you have a lot of detail, a lot of thoughts. I know this discussion's been going on for some time between you and Eric. And I just think it'd be great to have it in the operations committee where it can be on the agenda and discussed in detail.
Okay, yeah, it would make it easier to get agreement from them because we're asking them to shift from $700 to over $6,000 cost increase. And so that's for them, and they didn't anticipate this either. So that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know if they're going to agree to do that or not.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Thanks for bringing this to our attention.
I think Jeff Brown had his hand up next, Eric.
Jeff.
Hello. I just wanted to give an update on redistricting dealing in the county. We're getting closer dealing with it. It won't affect Kirkwood at all because you'll still be staying in District 3. But the one redistricting change that will happen is for our assembly member for the state. Amador will be joining with El Dorado County, so plus some of Sacramento County for our assembly member. So we're going to be running from Rancho Cordova up to Tahoe, from Truckee down to Amador. So this is just a draft map right now, but it's just something interesting to see how that's going to change.
Okay, would that mean, so that's for the state assembly?
State assembly.
And so that would mean, would Kirkwood then be split into 2 assemblies, districts?
Right, correct.
Just like we are with state senate, split
Right.
into 2. Interesting. 4 representatives, wow. Get a lot of attention
That's it.
or none. Who knows which way it goes.
And Supervisor Brown, aren't there 3 redistricting proposals that the board's considering out of all the ones that were developed? Is that what I heard from Supervisor Pat?
There's, they had talked about, we want to eventually get down to 3. Right now, we threw a whole bunch out of our last board meeting. We've had like a shotgun effect, just to show what we could do, what, there was some crazy stuff that we did, showing what was going on, but it's just with Ione grew by 2,000 people. So it was an incredible amount to the rest of the county. So District 2 is going to have to shrink quite a bit. And so that's where we're really trying to show it. But the one thing that was on our agenda was we want to try to stay with, part of what the board wanted to do is stay kind of what we have as a general mapping area and just adjust boundaries in that aspect. We don't want to do anything crazy.
Okay, Jeff. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for
Thank
the update. Is there anyone else?
Yes, Peter?
Yes, hello. I'm Peter Catalano. I've owned here for about 30 years, and I've recently moved up here June of 2018. I want to speak briefly to the base rates. I'm in a duplex, and my immediate neighbor is a transient resident, and the rest of the people in my cul-de-sac are transients. I understood the base rate was addressing the people that are not here enough. In other words, not contributing to the meter usage. Do you need some identification of my account number or my meter number? I'd like you to at least, or do you just go by my address? That's a question.
I'm
I'm not sure what, I mean,
Okay, I want to give you my meter number just so, because I wanted to come back to it. It's 3022427. 3022427. So my base rate is 119. I live here permanent. I'm a conservative user, one person, full-time resident. My neighbor, who's the other side of my duplex, his base rate is 83. I'm one person, same square footage. He's 4 people. So first of all, I don't know if there's a mistake, perhaps because our meters are together. My address is 50977, his is 50975. So the primary question is how did I get a higher base rate? And I pulled my other neighbors, $59. So I don't, from the premise of the base rate, what I understood was for the people that are not here enough and just not paying their fair share of the rates. So I'd like it looked into and kind of responded to later. If there's a potential that the base rate needs some rethinking or editing, I'd like to know that. So really the basis of my question is why is my base rate 119? My transient immediate neighbor is 83. I think that's pretty much my concern. I don't understand.
Okay, Peter. Well, thank you, Peter. Eric, I'm sure you can talk to Peter offline and explain.
yeah, I would also refer him to his letter. I mean, I pulled up his account and his usage is average usage over the last 3 years is 234, which is 1 EDU. And that's why it was assigned that way. So the letter does explain that all very well.
Yeah.
As well, but I can have
Perhaps a further explanation
and re-explain it.
Yeah.
So again, the thought was, what is my immediate neighbor 5097?
I'm not going to share your neighbor's information with you. I'm sorry, we
Right.
cannot do that.
Well, he gave me it. It was 83.
He
so
can
I don't
do
know.
it. Yes, he
Yeah.
can absolutely do that. I cannot.
Okay, is this something we can revisit?
I will have someone call you, but I would again refer you to the letter. It's pretty detailed and explains it. But I'm looking at your account now, and I'm looking at your AMU. So you were 1 EDU, and you continue to be 1 EDU.
Yeah, I think he just needs to understand exactly why is it 1 EDU.
Yeah, I'll have someone call him. It's based on his prior usage. So.
Yes, yeah.
So
I think you can just have that discussion with him so it's
I'll have
clear.
someone call him for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, thank
I'd like to, I'm not answering to any specific here, but as a general comment, I think we need to have a second look at the base rate for every utilities, not only electricity. Try to make sure that they are actually fair for full-time resident. I think this is something the board should look into, maybe at the committee level first. So I do understand the concern that Peter expressed, and I think we should actually have a second look at how these base rates are actually computed and assigned.
Okay, thanks, Bertrand. Are there any other comments from the audience?
We have Howard.
Howard.
Yeah, I didn't mean to have my hand up. I must have clicked accidentally. Sorry.
Howard does not have his hand up.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments from the audience today?
Seen any other raised hands at this point?
Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which is written comments from the public. Of course, we had Lisa's. And we had the other person who also had a question. And I understand, Eric, that you'll be in conversation or have been in conversation with him.
Staff has been in conversation with him.
Okay, good, thank you. And I don't know whether or not that will fit into the discussion will go on or have been going on at Finance Committee, but if it's appropriate, that would be good. Okay, let's move on to item number 7, adoption of the consent calendar. This is only for items A, B, and C, which is approval of the October 9th, 2021 regular minutes, current consent for claims, and the receivables and shutoffs report. Is there a motion to adopt items 7A, B, and C?
Yes, Dornbrook, so moved.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Is there a second?
Epstein seconds.
Okay,
Was that Bertrand?
it's okay. It can be Bob as well.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of the motion?
We have to go through.
Yeah, roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay. So let's move, let's see, the consent items brought forward. This is item D, reauthorize teleconference meetings. Bertrand?
Yeah, I'm concerned that we are not making progress toward reopening the board meetings to the public in live fashion. So I really don't want to have this item showing up in the recurrent system. There are several technology available that make the audio handling of mixed Zoom and public live feasible, and I just want to basically have it. Peter raised the concern earlier. I'm also concerned. I think we need to have again this board meeting in person. So that's what I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. So Eric, maybe you can give us an update on, well, there are two things I think.
Or I'm happy to give an update. We bought new technology. We had to upgrade our Zoom license. Cost us an extra about $2,000 a year so that we can do it. We have been testing with it. We've had to buy some new audio equipment to make it work. It will change the format of the online. The participants online will not be able to have video, but they will be able to speak. So they'll raise their hand and we'll be able to hear them. But we've been testing it, and so we should have that. I'm hoping we'll have that ready to go as soon as the board's ready. But we've been testing it for the last 2-3 weeks, and we keep having to buy new stuff to make it work. There's just a lot of echo, and so in the boardroom, so no one will be able to have a computer in the boardroom looking at Zoom. That will be one of the things that it's not feasible. I'll have to run the meeting from my office. I won't be able to run it from the boardroom, things like that. But we've got it almost down how it should work. So
Wow, that's interesting.
yeah.
The other thing that we just would need to be comfortable with is, would we all have to wear masks and speak through our masks.
That'd be a decision for the board.
Well, no, but is there a county, a public health, the Dr. Johnson, are the Alpine
I
County
can tell
supervisors
you
using that?
I know,
Yes.
I don't know if Supervisors Brown and Woodrow are still on, but I do know I've watched Amador counties a few times. Their supervisors, I think only one of them wears their mask. The rest do not. They separate out. I think are about 6 feet apart. And I'm not sure about Alpine. Is Terry still on?
Alpine,
Hey, Terry.
yeah. So in Alpine County, we wear masks.
So it just depends on what the board's predilection would be, how they want to do that.
Yeah. Well, board, how shall we decide on this? I mean, this authorization just allows us to do it if we feel a need to do remote. It doesn't say that we will do remote. So that's the authorization. I just feel like this should be an agenda item maybe in December and really nail down what the criteria are, if there's any other barriers to actually meeting in person. And then the question is,
demonstration, Eric, of what we have so far.
Yeah.
During the workday in December, I can have staff in there and just kind of do a little demonstration for the board of how it would sound and work.
I think that would be great.
We'll agendize it and do it that way. I'm happy.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And I agree that we just, we have to have a basis for making a decision. And I agree with Bertrand that it'd be really nice to get back in person for those who can be in person. I don't know what that, I mean, it seems odd that our general manager might be in the office and not visible to us.
You'll see me on the screen.
Right. Oh, you would be visible. Okay.
Yeah, as the host, you would see me on the TV.
It's just seems like an odd situation, but I suppose the board would get used to it. And then the question is members of the public coming in, I guess they'd just be separated out and wearing masks. Just FYI, the personnel committee meets on Monday, and we'll hear the staff's point of view on opening up the building and so on, and we'll be making a recommendation on that. So if I could put that make that an agenda item,
sure,
I think would be great. I think it's time to try to figure out if we can actually do this.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize the fact that COVID is here to stay, so we need to adjust, and it's not going to go away. So yeah. At some point we'll have to deal with it anyway. So, yeah. And I see that Howard has a raised hand now.
Howard, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I have something brief to say and then a question for Eric Christensen. I was at a hybrid meeting recently where they had a screen up. Everybody was in the same room that wanted to be at the meeting, and people that wanted to be remote were remote, and they were using a device called an owl. And so I wondered if that was one of the things you were talking about, Eric, or is it something more complicated? This owl thing really looked simple, and it kind of followed speakers around the room, and people who were at home zooming in participated almost as if they were there. It seemed pretty seamless.
No, we're not. I use it now at my Rotary meeting, but no, we have so much AV equipment here. We're using what we have, including the cameras that were already in existence.
Okay, well, let's put this on the agenda. This item D simply authorizes us to remain remote should we choose to do so. It doesn't require us to be remote.
And it also, the other thing is, if a board member does want to appear via hybrid meeting, this also allows that. It's not strictly Zoom or in person. It allows the hybrid. So right. If this is not reauthorized, then no one can appear via Zoom at all. That's a board member. They would have to physically be present in the service area.
In the service area, yeah.
Correct.
How do you define
Oh.
the service area?
It's defined by LAFCO when we were formed.
Well, no, but one or two board members could be remote, right? Even under the old Brown Act, I mean,
Yeah, the old way, you have to have 3 physically in the service area.
right, 3 physically in the service area, right?
And if they wanted to, if this was not reauthorized and they wanted to be at their home, they would have to open their home up to anyone that wanted to come in.
Right, that's the old way,
Correct.
the old way of doing it.
Yeah, I'm not clear on what a service area. Do we need to be in the CSB building or can we be in Kirkwood?
It's in the service area. It's as defined by LAFCO. It's our 2.5 square mile where we provide service.
Okay, so people could be home in Kirkwood within the service area.
Yes, but you'd have to open your home up to anyone that wanted to come in.
That's correct. If we don't have an emergency. Declare.
No, you'd have to open your home up to anyone that wants to come in. If you're going to appear from your house, that's the old rules.
Only if we don't have an emergency declaration like we have now.
Right. If we don't reauthorize this item 7D, then that we would go back to the old ways.
I got it.
Okay, so I'd like to move that we reauthorize the teleconference meetings and in conjunction with that, agendize this matter more completely in December for the December board meeting. That's a motion. Is there a second?
This is Bob. I second it.
Peter, roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go on to item 9, items for board action. The first one is our fiscal year 2020-21 audit. And we have 2 folks from Moss Adams. We have Olga and Todd. I don't know, Eric or Kelly, do you want to make an introduction or just do you want to turn it over to Moss Adams?
I'll let Kelly make the introduction, but I just did want to know, Olga, do you want to share your own PowerPoint and drive it, or do you just want to have me drive it?
What you have on the screen is great.
Okay.
Well, they're Todd and Olga are representatives from Moss Adams, and I think we had considering the circumstances, we got through the audit pretty cleanly. So I'll let Todd and Olga take over.
Thank you, Kelly. And yeah, first off, just a big thank you to Kelly and Eric and their whole team, given the circumstances with the Caldor fire and the evacuations. All things considered, it ran very smoothly. No big issues came up, as we will see in the presentation. So on the next slide, this is just sort of a letter going through the details of what we went through with our audit report. Basically, the important information, all of this is also included in the audit report and the internal controls communications letters. So as I just said, big thank you to the team. We did issue our audit report on November 2nd with an unmodified opinion. This means that in our opinion as auditors, the statements do conform with US GAAP, which for the district would be the guidance promulgated by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, so GASB. In addition to the audit report, we also issued a compliance letter for the RUS management letter, as well as an internal control letter where we're not required to opine on the internal controls of the district. However, we are required to note if there's any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we have deemed. And we're pleased to report there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified this year. And that internal control report was also issued on November 2nd. Part of our required communications is just to reiterate our responsibilities as the auditors. So we are here to express an opinion on the financial statements, as I noted, whether or not they materially agree with US GAAP. We're also required to gain an understanding of internal controls for the purpose of specializing our audit procedure and make sure that we have an understanding of the district's controls, and for the purpose of the letter of identifying if there are material weaknesses or not. We're not necessarily saying, yes, there are no material weaknesses, but we had none that were identified in the course of our audit. Our audit is designed to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance. So that means we rely on statistical sampling and a risk-based approach. And then finally, we're also required to communicate any specific items that we feel would be in your interest for the board that may impact your decision-making ability. So those items are discussed on the next slides as well. So our plan, scope, and timing of the audit, we were able to complete the audit for the most part in as communicated timing. Obviously, we had some hiccups there through with the fires, but it was overall consistent with the timing we'd previously communicated with Eric with our entrance board meeting, as well as with management through our engagement letter. The significant accounting policies of the district are discussed in footnote 1 of the financial statements, as well as the significant accounting estimates. And you can see in the footnotes, the significant accounting estimates that we spend a fair bit of our time on are the depreciable lives and estimated residual value of the district plant, as well as the accrual of capitalized construction costs for construction in process, and then also the pension and post-employment obligations. So for our required communications, we're required to note any consultations with other accountants, which we had none noted in the current year. As far as disagreements with management, we had no disagreements or difficulties encountered during the audit. And for the potential effect of any significant risks or exposures, these are disclosed in the financial statements. A general disclosure about COVID-19, just that there is still unknowns, long-term impacts, but that is also in the financial statements. We had no audit adjustments in the current year. We did have one past audit adjustment, so a suggestion that in our opinion and management's opinion was not material, so it is not reflected in the financial statements. And this is an adjustment we have every year. It's just for an interfund balance on the employee housing. And as you can see, a relatively small amount. So not significant to the financial statements, but required to be communicated in the setting. We did note one internal control item that we noted during our audit. There were certain areas in the financial close process where there were reviews happening, but we weren't necessarily able to evidence that review. And you can see the details in this slide here. It was noted that management has since remedied this. There was a new financial close policy that was issued in September that remedies this issue. So this is no longer even an issue, but still a required communication as a finding from the audit. And then lastly, we just wanted to touch on new upcoming accounting standards. GASB 87, which deals with leases, will be effective for this coming fiscal year. And we are working with Kelly and Eric on what we need to do to be ready for that. But that will be a change to next year's financial statements. So just wanted to make sure to bring that up. And then finally, the last item, per the board's request, last year we included a quick breakdown of comparing the audited financial statements to the internal numbers, because there are a couple of differences between the internal statements that the board reviews regularly and then the adjustments that need to be made for the GASB statements. So you can see in here, the key differences just relate to the Melrose Fund, which get excluded for the audit purposes, and then as well as the current versus long-term portion of the current debt. And then on the statement of operations side, there's just the internal allocations. There's slight differences between which buckets some of those allocations go into. So that's sort of the walk across between the audited statements and the internal financial statements. And then lastly, just another big thank you to the district staff. They were very helpful and responsive throughout the audit process, and obviously very flexible with all the stuff going on. So it was our pleasure to serve the district in this capacity, and are looking forward to another great year next year.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you so much. John, Finance Committee has reviewed the audit.
Yeah, it was, thanks to the audit team and thanks to Kelly, it was, well, I've only been on the board for a year, but Bob felt like it was probably and Kelly felt like it was the cleanest audit we've had to date. And so that's a credit to the team, and especially given the distraction of the fires and such.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience regarding the audit? Any hands up?
I don't see any, Eric.
Okay. Board members, are there any questions or comments that you'd like to address?
No, I just want to reemphasize that I don't know how many audits I've participated, I guess 9. This was really clearly they've all been getting better, but this was really the best we've ever had in terms of accuracy of data and activities. So congratulations.
Okay, thanks, John. Bob, any other comments from the board members? If not, then entertain a motion to accept this audit.
Motion to accept.
Okay, that's John. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Bob, I second it.
Okay, Peter, roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornberg, aye.
Okay, well, congratulations, Kelly. Thank you to them, Todd and Olga and the team.
Yeah, thanks, Todd and Olga. Appreciate you showing up too.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
nice, safe drive to Palm Springs, Todd.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
thank you. Great job, Kelly. Great job, Eric. We really appreciate it. Really, really well done. Kelly, you are up on item B, finances, and
I am up.
items 1 through 4.
Sure. So we'll start with the consolidated balance sheet, and that is on page 95 of your packet. I didn't have any specific notes on the balance sheet, except you can notice that total operating is up from plan by $343,000. Are there any questions on the consolidated balance sheet? Okay, we'll move on then to the revenue account by fund. You'll notice that water is at a negative, as is snow removal. Water was, we discussed at the previous board meeting, the reason why it's in a negative is due to the payment of principal and interest on the COP loans. I do expect water to have some recovery from this throughout the year. And then snow removal obviously is at a negative because we don't start posting contract revenue to snow removal until October. Any questions on the revenue account by fund? Okay, we'll move on then to the combined income statement on page 98 of your packet. Operating revenues year to date are down from plan by $131,000. But total operating for year to date for the first quarter of the fiscal year is actually up from plan by $3,400. So considering, you know, the revenues being down, but still being up from plan and total operating, I consider that a win for the first quarter of the year.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll move on to the general fund on page 99 of your packet. I just wanted to note the overages in wages and benefits. And this was just due to the salaries being posted to GNA during the evacuations for the Caldor fire. But that's the negative effects of that, or the savings in other departments. You'll see that through, we're actually under budget for salaries and wages year to date as a whole. So I just wanted to make that note. Moving on to
Kelly, I'm sorry to answer, but now why was that moved to GNA as opposed to, say,
That was for the employees that were unable to get here due to the evacuation.
Oh, I see.
Right.
I see. Got it. Well, when we get to the fire, which I guess is next, I just noted that the salaries and wages are very low there. So I thought,
right,
which I found interesting.
Yeah, for those employees that were here during the fire, they were billed against, because they were still running operations, they were billed against their operational divisions. Because they were keeping the lights on and the water flowing. But they were also firefighters, which is how they got through the evacuation order roadblocks.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Sure. We'll move on to water on page 102 of your packet. Operating revenues year to date for water are down from plan by $17,000, but this is all mainly due to base rates, which we have previously discussed. Year to date, total operating for water is up from plan by $3,600. Moving on to wastewater on page 103. Operating revenues for wastewater are down from plan by 51 or just about $52,000. Again, mainly due to the base rates. And again, total operating for wastewater is actually up from plan by just about $3,900. We'll move on to electric on page 105. Operating revenues for electric year to date are down from plan by $24,000. Total operating for electric is down from plan by $62,000. And this is mainly due to cost of goods sold and the timing of when I budgeted for diesel costs and things of that nature. So you can see cost of goods sold is over plan by $29,000. And a lot of that is due to diesel costs, which I have budgeted $25,000 in diesel expenses in the month of October. So it's really a timing issue at this point. Even with having to run the generators, we budget for that type of expense in October, and then again later in the year, another $25,000. So I expect this to come back in line with the October financial statements.
I have a question here. The budget was based on the previous rate structure. Is that correct?
No.
It was based on, because we switched the rate structure for electricity August 1st. So
right, but I had to do the budget, you know, at the very last minute. The budget was made to fall in line with what the new rate structure was going to be, which is why I was working so down to the minute to make sure that happened.
Sounds good. So the question now is, since we did not collect in July with a new rate structure, that does create a deficit compared to what we would have if with a new rate structure. So
no, I budgeted in July that July would be on the old rate structure, and then August and moving forward would be on the new rate structure.
So that means what you see here, the number is not affected by the rate structure change.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to propane on page 108 of your packet. Operating revenues for propane are down by $42,000 as compared to budget. But again, year-to-date total operating for propane is actually up from plan by just about $11,000. And then finally, solid waste on page 109. Just wanted to make a note regarding the variance in operations and maintenance. And again, during the Caldor fire, we only had 2 tips from ACEs during the month of September, which is why the operations and maintenance costs were so low for the month of December, or for the month of September, excuse me. Any questions on income statements? Okay, we'll move on then to the income statement comparison on page 111 of your packet. Just again, a note, you can see with the new rate structure as compared to last year, commercial and residential usage is down, but base rates are up. So that's just something that we'll keep seeing going forward.
Kelly, are the headings reversed here? The dates, the 2021, 2022?
No, the comparison is for September 20 to September 2021. Sorry, 2020 to 2021.
But the current year is the first column, right? And the last year was the second column.
Oh, yes, sorry about that. Actually, the first column is 2021 and the second column should say 2020. I apologize.
Right. Okay.
I didn't notice that.
Okay.
Okay, moving on then to October 21 preliminaries. You can see operating revenues for October were actually up from plan by $41,000, which brings our year-to-date total revenues down from plan by just $89,000. So a really good month for October in revenues.
So I know the expenses are just the budgeted expenses, not actual.
Right.
But is there a formula problem down along the total operating line? Like for example, the 626,000 seems like that should be more like 404,000.
You know, I would have to look at my spreadsheet.
But it's just the one number minus the other number, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there seems to be a little formula problem in a couple spots there.
Sorry about that. I didn't notice it. I apologize.
That's okay. I like seeing the 626,000.
But again, this is something that I have to actually put in a spreadsheet and do the formulas on. So
Right,
there is definitely it could definitely be my error. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay, moving on to cash flow on page 113. For the month of October, we ended at 1.757 million, which is just about $4,000 more than what we had budgeted. And this is mainly due to a timing issue with the due date of our October bill being on a weekend. A lot of our AR revenue hit the bank after the end of the month. So you'll see that come through in November. But even still, we're still looking pretty good considering.
Yeah.
Any questions on cash flow? Okay. Finally, known budget variances. Electric cost of purchased power was updated to show the balance through September 2021, and also the cost of diesel through September 2021. And again, these are the variance to the budgeted amount. And like I said, in October, I had budgeted for $25,000 worth of diesel costs. So I expect that to disappear on the next version of known budget variances for the cost of diesel.
Okay, are there any questions at all on the financials for Kelly? If not, Kelly, thank you.
Thank you.
And we now have go to 9C, performance reporting and aquifer levels. Is Brandy on the line? Yes, hi Brandy.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yes, so performance reporting for the month of October. If we start with electric, we see a little uptick in our October electric production. It's all purchased off the grid. Our losses for the month were 21%, bringing us to 20% year to date. This is a little high. I think that some of the October and possibly September losses are because we haven't been able to get to the backside in several months because of the snow and whatnot. So I will hope that we'll get back there in November. If not, we'll catch up on that in December. Propane, you can see that we did see a reversal from our negative 32% loss from last month. As we talked about, that was really just due to the timing of the fire and when we got our reads in September. So we're in October at a positive 8%. We're 2% for year to date, which is about normal for propane. Moving on over into water, our production in gallons from our wells was 944,000 gallons. We had a 13% loss for the month, and that brings us to 12% year to date. And you will notice that we had significant fire department use in August and September because of the fires. We also had quite a bit of fire use, though not our fire department, in October, but it was put into actual metered because it was from construction meters that were out in the valley and filling up tanker trucks and that sort of thing. So year to date, we're looking a little less than our goal at 12%. And lastly, wastewater, we had 759,000 gallons metered coming into the plant. 23% of that was not metered water, so I&I. And we did have significant rainfall in October prior to it switching to snow for our big storm so far. But 23% unidentified usage in October is about average. So even with the large rainfall, we saw about average inflow. Are there any questions on that before I make a note on aquifer levels?
I'd like to make a comment first on the wastewater, which is actually showing up that the work done to plug many holes into our collection system seems to work, and that's great news. On the electrical, I'm still concerned that we have, in September, we knew it was too high because of the fact that we postponed the date should not impact. We still have more than 25% loss on these 2 months combined. And I'm very concerned on that. I think it shows that we need to do better work on chasing our losses. And I know that time is a factor for, but with our aging infrastructure, we need to be able to do more. And planning committee, we try to assess a bit what could be done with that. And it looked like actually this is going to be a very expensive endeavor. So replacing older equipment and stuff like that. So it really shows that we need to have a serious look. I don't know if it's operations who would lead that or else, on how we are going to maintain our infrastructure. And also, do we have enough staff to actually handle these issues? That's a question I would like to ask. I was going to bring it to discussion as well, but I just want to start to put that question here is, in light of all this infrastructure, electrical, but others as well, other services as well, we actually, does the KMPUD should actually add another position so we can actually be more aggressive in maintaining the infrastructure, reducing our loss, and help moving the electrification and all these things. So that was a comment I would like to make to the board.
Was the September loss, Brandy, was that partly because we were on diesel some of the time?
Yes, September was, we had an extended run of diesel generation there, so that always ups our losses. And we also had several valley-wide outages, and the re-energizing of the transformers produces losses also. So those contributed to the September loss.
And how much, I mean, to Beer John's point, how much of the losses do you think, I mean, I know you probably don't know the answer to this, but are due to old buried lines on the electric?
I will say that we've spent a significant amount of time trying to find unmetered usage, and we feel pretty confident that we have eliminated most, if not all, of the unmetered use, which would mean that most of the losses are either transformer losses, old transformers that are just less efficient, direct bury lines that have inherently higher losses, and things like, you know, when we have outages, just the losses for heating up the transformer. So I think that that is where our opportunity is if we want to make the investment to replace old but functional equipment.
Mm-hmm. So that might be something
Definitely
for budget.
something we can consider for capital projects. We would, you know, the ROI on another FTE is just not there, but we definitely could look at hiring out a contractor to do that work.
That work being to evaluate each piece of equipment and saying this one is still operable, but it's inefficient and could be
replaced. I mean, yes, but you know, we are having that study done right now. The board authorized last capital, or you know, this recent capital budget. So we are having an engineer do that. So we could, if the board wanted to, add that to his scope to have him not, because basically what he's doing is identifying weaknesses in the system and where it's feasible for EV charging and at what levels. But we could ask him to add a scope item, a portion of that, since he's doing it anyway, of recommended infrastructure replacement, you know, what we should be prioritizing and start weaving that into capital budget. But yeah, we definitely would want to farm that out to a contractor. That's not an in-house. That's really a contractor effort, not an in-house operator effort.
Okay, I think we discussed actually the idea of adding that scope to the currently planned study. knowing that there will be an economy of scale of
Yes.
doing together instead of doing or coming back later with a different study.
Yeah, we did discuss that at planning. I'll put that on the December agenda for the board to consider if they want to pay for that out of scope work,
Yes.
budgeted work, but I'll put that on December if that's the predilection of the board. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Okay. Any other comments on the performance reporting before we get to the aquifers? No. Okay, aquifer levels.
My only comment here is that you can see that our well for aquifer level numbers are still quite strong. Vail has begun making snow when possible at the Timber Creek location, which pulls off of our water system. So we're monitoring this per the agreement. If this number starts to drop and become a concern, we will let them know. But so far, so good on the aquifer levels.
Great. That's good. Thank you. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Bertrand.
On aquifer level, when we get a huge, let's call it what it is, an atmospheric river coming up, how many months or weeks before you can see the impact on the aquifer level, if any?
It just depends on what time of year it comes. If we are in a period where we have high usage rates and we're drawing down the aquifer, it's really hard to see an impact at all.
Okay.
Would the impact be more seen in well 2, which is a shallow aquifer, versus the deep ones?
No, the way we've changed our operations, we've tried to get it where you won't see those fluctuations, and we back off of well 2. We've backed off well 2 a lot, and we've really mitigated the coliform hits we were getting when I first got here as a result. So
yeah,
we're using that well less. So I don't think you would see it more there because we're using it less.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, thank you, Brandy. That's great. Let's move on to item 9D, propane service. Eric, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. So
introduce
this has been kicking around for, I don't know, about a year and a half, I think, at planning. A lot of good discussion, and basically the consensus of planning reached some consensus on some things and then is punting to the board to make a decision on others. But the planning committee recommends that the board declare a moratorium on any further connections to the propane system. And that reaches 2 aspects. One is new construction of new subdivisions. So conditional will serves. So they recommend that immediately on adoption, any new will serves, we just tell them there is no propane available for new subdivisions under the current moratorium. And then for construction of new homes on existing lots and existing subdivisions, that the board also declare a moratorium, but give a defined length of time. There was discussion of a couple different lengths of time, but no consensus between 6 and 12 months. It could be any other number in there as well. But there was discussion that if we're going to do this on existing lots and existing subdivisions, that we give people enough time, one, to capture homes that are already in construction and allow people to make adjustments as they're in design, so that they have some time to pivot. And then the other thing was to develop an incentive program to encourage electrification of propane appliances. And then the last thing was, we've talked about this a while, and it has been in the capital budget, is to do a propane capacity study. There were a couple of members of the planning committee who didn't want to spend any money on propane, especially if we're going to, slouch towards Gomorrah and get rid of it like many other cities have done. At least in terms of natural gas, since nobody has propane except for us and one other special district in the entire state. But if we were going to do it, that should include the items listed here, which is distribution capacity of the system, storage capacity, and ability to expand that, curb stop, service line retrofit, which has been in the capital budget. I think it's looking towards 2 years from now, I think, or maybe it's next year. And then expansion of propane. What would that look like? And if we do decide to do a capacity study, the board just needs to set the parameters. What are we designing to? A 5-day closure, a 7-day closure? How many people in the valley? that sort of thing. I know Brandy had done a back of the napkin one for the board in 2017 or 16. And are those parameters still good? So anything you want to add to that, Bertrand?
Yeah, no, that's a good summary. There is really something I think the board should take action now is discussing on the moratorium, and propane shifting is still something that planning is working on, and we'll come back to the board on it. And the last one, also decide if we want to invest in more propane or decide to cost down, trying to push forward on electrification, and therefore be able to stay at the current level of infrastructure and not invest any more money in propane. And so that's the three items. And so I think we should first discuss the moratorium at the board level, and I think that the summary you have is good.
Okay. Let's see. Are there any, what are thoughts, first of all, from board? And then we'll see if there are any thoughts from the audience as well.
Well,
Can I just add one thing in here too, just to clarify? And I missed it, and Bertrand and I talked about it a bunch, but I want to make sure it gets in there. This would be just a moratorium on district service. People can still have propane tanks and their own propane individual service. That was a point we want to make sure is clear. We have no authority to eliminate propane in the valley. We only have authority to eliminate our service. So I know, Bertrand, anything you want to add to that? I know that was a big discussion point.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
Sorry about that, John. I just want to get that in there.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's an associated issue here, which is how do we deal with electric heat for both new developments and for construction of new homes and existing developments. And so that's on the agenda for the next finance committee meeting. But we do, you know, we have to be able to provide an alternative that's financially attractive, and we haven't yet done that. So it would be something like sub-metering heating and taking that consumption out of the base rate or something along those lines, but that's still work to be done.
Okay. Other comments from other board members? Well, my thought here is I think a moratorium that would have some defined period of time for new subdivisions is appropriate, because there's nothing really coming along that I know of, nothing immediate. And that would certainly send the signal that that's the intent, not to provide new propane service pending the discussions at finance, pending technological advances associated with heat pumps and so on. I'm reluctant to have a moratorium on new homes in existing subdivisions. Well, partly because what John said is we don't have a good solution yet for an alternative. And I think that we have to have that, either how the base rate will be established, but also really how will people heat their homes. I know that heat pumps have some promise, but there are some real difficulties in our climate to use them. And I think Eric, by the way, and Brandy attended a conference on that and came away feeling like it just isn't there yet. So I'd be reluctant to do a moratorium on for propane connections to new homes on existing lots, at least until the way resistant, because the alternative really, I think, is resistance heat, isn't it? So unless we want them people burning wood, which is not much better than propane. So it just seems to me that we ought to be sure we understand how someone can somewhat economically use resistance heat in a new home before we establish a moratorium on the propane. So I would support the first bullet, but not the second bullet until there's more information from finance.
And by that extension, I assume you support the third bullet then,
The third bullet.
which would have to be the study. We'd have to do a study if we're not gonna moratorium existing lots.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, well, it depends on how long the finance committee is going to be considering this and how long, much the board will discuss it subsequently, and at what point some solution will be arrived at. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be, I mean, to be honest, I don't think it has to be a hugely extensive or expensive study. I mean, it seems to me that really what we want to know is we want 7-day capacity store, at peak use. We know we don't have it right now. You can take an educated guess at how many homes will be built, say in the next 10 years or something like that, and say how much additional capacity would we need, and is it even feasible to do it in the space that we have? I mean, to me, that's the calculation. I'm not sure.
The other is the distribution system. We don't know how much capacity that distribution system has and what improvements would have to be made for new subdivisions, et cetera. So no one's ever done a study on that system. There's never
Well,
been.
I would say moratorium on new subdivisions, so I don't think that would be included. I'm just talking about in existing subdivisions, the likelihood of what, a couple homes a year, right? That seems to be the pace. So over 10 years, maybe 20 homes, 30 homes. So what additional requirement would there be? And is it even feasible to expand storage and where we have our tanks? I'm not sure that it is, but I'm not sure either that it isn't. I just think some more work needs to be done for the second bullet. I'm happy to support the first bullet.
Yeah, and finance can address some sort of scheme for, like I said, sub-metering heat, but we really aren't prepared to be able to provide opinion on feasibility for heat pumps and things like that, right? I mean, it's kind of outside the finance committee's purview.
And any other thoughts from other board members or from the audience?
Well, I have a question. The 15 townhomes that are kind of up in the air over at the Timber Creek parking lot, is that considered a new development, or is that considered an existing development?
That's a new development in their conditional will serve, which was reissued, so there may not be propane capacity available.
So they would fall under the first bullet?
They could, that'd be up to the board, but I did indicate to them that may not be available for their subsequent development.
I would recommend that we put that, qualify them as being in the first bullet.
I would think it would apply to all approved subdivisions that are unbuilt at this point, but that's a board decision again. Doug has his hand up, Eric.
Doug.
Hey everyone, just
Hi,
a quick comment on communications of anything here, because this is related, I think, to the propane enclosures that we've been recommending, in the sense that I don't want anyone to be confused about the service, the moratorium here, and any service that people are making. Just because I've seen comments and over the amount of money people are spending on that, and I know that this isn't the same thing, but I'm just saying that people who are paying money for an enclosure on propane, they might see that there's a moratorium being put onto propane, might wonder why they're spending money on enclosures, and might be confused about whether their future service is going to be affected by this. And I think it would be good if the board, if this would go out, if this moratorium were to be announced in a newsletter or whatnot, to make sure that that's clarified in terms of the differences between what they're paying for in their enclosures and what this moratorium means.
Good. Bob, do you have a thought on this matter?
I'm just confused. Do we have outstanding will serves that we need to, follow up on?
I believe we do. Conditional will serve.
We have conditional will serves out there.
And what's the condition based on?
They're conditioned on multiple things. You know,
Oh,
wastewater, for example, was conditioned on a new permit for, you know, potentially treatment capacity. Propane was conditioned on potential storage capacity, et cetera. So
oh, I see. Okay,
there
so
there may be some WILSRs out there though that predate me. I've not issued a single WILSR since I've been here. But the condition WILSRs, I did have to reissue 2 or 3 since I've been here, and they've been much more rigorously conditioned than.
and those are conditioned on increasing our capacity?
They're conditioned on, like I said, Bob, there are a lot of things they're conditioned on, which includes capacity, distribution, all of the storage, all of the above. The conditional WILSRs are pretty broad and gives the district a lot of, they're very conservative for the district.
Okay.
And I can share the most recent one I sent out if you wanted just to see it, to see what all the conditions are, but they're across all the service areas.
Well, it seems to me that, I mean, I think we all want to see a shift from propane to electricity for environmental reasons, for financial reasons, for safety reasons. So that direction, I think, is really good. I just think that before we put a moratorium within existing subdivisions like KMA or East Meadows or Palisades, we should be confident that there's a reasonable alternative. And I think right now that reasonable alternative is largely resistance heat. Some people may be able to experiment with heat pumps, and
I disagree with that. It's a white elephant. Heat pumps are working. It's just, I don't understand why people keep saying this is not working, this is not working.
well, so Bertrand, maybe you know, you have an answer, but heat pumps require equipment outside. Is that right?
Well, actually, not necessary. First, you could do heat pump with geothermal, and that has no issue. I mean, that it's can be totally enclosed.
Heat pump with what? I'm sorry, didn't hear that.
Geothermal heat pump, not air.
Oh, geothermal. Okay.
So that is available. There are some houses in the valley that work with it. It has absolutely zero problem. This is actually the best solution. That's number one. Number two, air heat pumps. There is several adaptations on the heat pumps that are specifically geared to cold climate, and they work just fine. And finally, you can also have a resistant heat backup that for in case everything happens, let's say we are in minus 40 for 2 weeks or something like that. So for the unthinkable, and people can still have backup solutions. So I think we need to stop saying heat pump are a future thing. This is working, and it is a fully, it has an initial sunk cost. I agree with that. There's no question on that. And I think that's why the middle bullet point, which say we need to encourage electrification, I would much rather spend any money on a rate propane study, on a propane capacity study, not rate, on actually using the PG, public good charge that we have to have some incentive for people to use heat pump. But I think we need to stop saying this is something for the future. It's working, it's been working in many colder places and here in Kirkwood, Anchorage, even Truckee. Truckee is much colder than Kirkwood is, and they are using it extensively. And I asked Anne Fleur, my daughter architect, and this is something that is not for the future, it's here today.
Yeah, and my understanding is for the air heat pumps, it's not a matter of temperature. I know that there's equipment out there now that works. It's not as efficient as the 3.0 factor, but it does work. I understand that. I know that at least that's what I've been told, and I believe it. What I don't know is what you do with 15 or 20 feet of snow around the house. And so then if what you're saying is that the alternative is to do geothermal, I know that's an enormous initial cost to install.
Actually, much less than it used to. That cost has come down. You can get today for 25K, you can get a geothermal system. You don't have to go very deep. You can go 3 feet below. For a typical cabin, you need something like 300, 400 feet linear. And so you can do a snake. So there are solutions. There are many solutions. And I think the electrical rate change that we've made really make it possible. Before, I totally agree, at 66 cents, this was outrageously expensive. But now at 22 cents, this is definitely, that's why we need to change. I mean, it's to allow people to do that. So I think we need to be consistent, and I'm fine having a long period, maybe 2 years, instead of 6 months or 12 months. I'll be fine with that. Also, we can make a quick calculation, like you said. I estimate to about 80 empty lots, something like that. I don't have the exact number, but that's the gross estimate. So it's a finite number, so we could compute that. But the bottom line is we need to give the message that people need to look at alternative. I'm happy to put together some financial rebate for people to do it. And in Turkey, for water heater, they are actually, the rebate they have, if you switch from gas, I think it's propane as well, it's $3,000. So with the PGC, they found $3,000 for people who actually switch from a gas water heater to a heat pump water heater. So, and if you are switching from a resistance to a heat pump water heater, then it's $1,000. So anyway, I agree, all this need to be put together, but we know the direction. We all, I think, all agree that we need to electrify. I mean, this is, and it's easy. It's just there. I mean, if we don't put this marker for people to see that they need to look at solutions, then we just kick the ball down the road and we are not making any progress. So I'll be fine with 2 years more delay for the moratorium. So that give a lot of time for people to think and do what it is. But I think we need to act.
Well, one thing.
It would be very helpful from the finance standpoint to have a reference implementation that we could get some sort of feel for what a cost per BTU is. Then we can more accurately provide a rate structure to support that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that almost now that we're talking about this, instead of a propane study, I think just exactly what John just said, we need a couple of model designs, engineering designs, along with costs, so people have something to refer to as a possibility. I mean, I'm hearing different messages. I hear from Eric, who attended this major conference, that heat pumps, which he supports and has in his own home down in Pioneer, just aren't ready for prime time in Kirkwood. Now, you're saying that it is. You know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know, and I don't know what the costs are. So I think that if we would, I like the idea of putting down a marker that I think is of intent. And I think that's important. That's good. So if we could say in 2 years, I mean, it's sort of an arbitrary number, but 2 years, there'll be a moratorium on new propane connections of any kind. I mean, that'll give a future board the opportunity to reverse that if, in fact, whatever reference designs can be created just don't seem to pan out, then that can be reversed. But yeah.
I'd like to add something. I agree with you, Eric. I'd like to add something. I mean, part of the PGC fund could also be used to do a pilot. And so it sounds like people are still not convinced that we can have heat pump in Kirkwood. And I think actually there are several people in the process of doing that now. But anyway, we could also maybe help a pilot project somewhere with using some of this PGC fund that we have. And I'm open with that. And I agree we need to, once the moratorium is in place, we definitively need to have all this well explained, lined out, and so the rate structure need to be there. The rebate, will be, if any, should be ready. All that need to be ready to go. And but 2 years is plenty time to do that. And so that's what I would recommend is just keep it inside, do a global moratorium 2 years ahead. And so that gives us everyone time to adjust to it, think about it, make it work, have some demonstrate that it works. And yeah, that's basically what I would support.
I see Howard's hand up.
I can let to go to Bertrand's point. The CSB HVAC system is failing dramatically. So if we want to do a pilot project, the CSB would be a place you could potentially think about doing it.
Perfect. That'd be excellent, actually. That would be a test case, show how it works. I think that's a great idea.
Well, see what an engineering design would be, see what it costs.
Exactly.
See whether or not how many units you need, see whether it can be a central unit or if it's room by room, how much resistance heat you're going to use, to supplement, etc. Howard's hand is up, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to address one thing, Eric, which you mentioned about wood. And I think as a backup, certainly within the existing community, there's a lot of wood stoves. And like my next door neighbor on Yarrow Place put in a new wood stove that had to comply with new air regulations. And it's super efficient. So the technology has improved on wood stoves. So, wood is still a renewable resource. In order to make my home more fire protected, I'm going to have to take down a bunch of trees over the coming year. And so I'm planning to convert that into firewood. So firewood is a renewable resource. And I realized that in high density places like the Bay Area, the air regulations are pretty much precluding people from doing much wood burning. But I think with a low density place like Kirkwood, and we're not a closed in basin like Lake Tahoe, I think that it's still reasonable to expect that people can put wood stoves in to supplement their heat pump. And in fact, I know quite a few people that are doing exactly that.
And Howard, the high efficiency stoves, the carbon impact is what?
I can't give you the exact numbers, but I mean, I tell you the ash that comes out of it, just as an indicator, there's very little ash that comes out. So most of the carbon that's going into the wood stove is being converted to CO2. Yes, that's true, but then trees take CO2 out of the atmosphere. So it's not like fossil fuel where it's locked into the ground and now we're going to bring it out. So I think there needs to be a distinction between propane and wood. I don't want to see us, I'd hate to see us decide that there's not going to be firewood at Kirkwood.
Yeah.
We don't have the authority to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So the district has no authority to do that.
Well, I think these are all questions and good reasons for, yes, we could establish a moratorium, but I think, starting 2 years from now or the beginning of 2024 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so there's time to really noodle this stuff out and make sure that it's the right thing to do. I mean, I know it's the right thing to do from an environmental perspective.
It would send a strong message, I think. If we do that, I think it really would help things move forward, because now everyone is kind of idle. And I think if we have now this moratorium set up for everyone in 2 years, people will start thinking about alternatives. So, and like you said, if really pan out that it's not working, we can still reverse that before. So I see it more as a communication tool here for the 2-year delay, but I still see value in issuing such a moratorium. So it will make people look at alternatives.
So we've got a number of related items here that all need to come together. So I think we need to make sure that those are assigned out to staff and committee. We need a reference implementation that would include, manufacturers that are would warranty their product up at 700-800 feet and what the costs are for that, so we can develop a proper rate structure to support the reference implementation. So there's quite a bit of work to do there. So let's make sure we've got that assigned out and we're tracking that on a regular basis to make progress.
I agree. Okay, any other comments? And
Eric,
yeah,
the only other thing I want to add in is we need to, before we do a moratorium, first of all, a 2-year moratorium might say, get it built quickly because you might not be able to later. So I don't want the reverse effect that it encourages people to do something faster. I would rather be able to explain exactly how their electricity will be affordable. In other words, are we going to establish that electricity used for heating is not included in your base rate and have some mechanism to be able to verify the amount that's used, either, in a new community setting, you can kind of design for that up front. It's a little bit harder to retrofit, but I think we need to decide some things like that. I think it'd be a great idea for this building to, I don't know if we're ready to do an RFP, but if there's some way to say, ask people for suggestions of what it would look like for reference both so the ground source is really the way to go, but I don't know for different lots when you hit granite. And so drilling in granite, if you have to do that, is obviously much more expensive than in soil. I mean, we did the first one in Berkeley, which was all ground sourced. It worked out extremely well, but we didn't, it was all soil. We didn't hit anything else in doing that. So I think we need to define the actual electric strategy, and which I think is eliminating electricity from the base rate. If it's properly metered, having a couple of proposals from various companies say, I'm willing to work on this in Kirkwood. These are the services I could provide, and then eventually do an RFP on this building. But I think we need to have an actual idea of what it would look like for new construction and how it would all fit together.
my thought is, I don't think people are going to look at this and then accelerate construction because of it. I just don't think that'll be the motivating factor. And I guess weighing all things, for me, sending the message that this is the intent is important, but giving enough time to do all the things you've just said, so that the board in 2 years can evaluate where it is and either lift the moratorium or continue it. So that's my thought.
Let me make a comment on what Bob just said, actually, on trying to find a way to have a different rate for electricity used for heating. And so actually PG&E has that today. So the way it works is they have a baseline. And when you are below that baseline, you pay less. When you are above that baseline, you pay more. And the way and now that baseline is depending of your system. If you have a gas system, your electrical baseline is lower. If you have an electrical heating system, then your baseline is higher. And that allows basically people to heat at a cheaper rate. It's very simple. There is no retrofit, no sub-meters, no nothing. So that's a very simple system, and we could do that.
Okay. Well, I think we have our points of view expressed. Would anybody care to make a motion with regard?
I'm making a motion that we do actually implement a moratorium that will be effective immediately to any new construction, including non-developed will serve that we have out here based on the capacity restriction that we have. and with a 2-year, 24 months delay for existing lot in existing division.
Yeah, I think what you're saying.
Question, are
Go ahead.
there any legal restrictions on us issuing a moratorium today? I mean, do we have to have like a public hearing to go through a 90-day process?
No.
No, we can do a moratorium up
This is
today?
the public hearing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a moratorium on construction. It's just a moratorium on propane connection.
Propane
So-
survey.
Yeah, it's a
people can-
moratorium on the services the district will provide. It's not a moratorium on anything else. We have no authority on all these other things that have been talked about. We're just a utility district. We're not the county. We're not the building department. We're not the state. Just a utility.
Yeah, and actually, people can still have a tank on their lot. In KMA, it has to be below ground. I don't know what other HOA does, but it is actually, people can still have a propane system if they want. It's just that KMPUD will not provide it.
I'm just curious, Eric and staff, where's your thinking on this?
I'm happy to do whatever the board directs. I think also,
That's not what I'm asking.
I'm not paid to have an opinion on this. It's
Yes,
up to my pay grade.
Well,
I think that the motion should be very carefully crafted to define exactly what we're talking about. A lot of stuff's been talked about. The motion should be as specific as that. So if we're going to do a moratorium on any new construction, we need to define on, or new subdivisions, I should say, what does that mean? Does that mean subdivisions that don't have final maps yet? Which in my mind, that's what that means, but it should be clarified that for subdivisions that do not have final maps, the district will not provide propane service, will no longer provide propane service to be reevaluated in 2 years or something like that. To be very clear what we're talking about, because if we do it that way, then it excludes all existing empty lots and existing subdivisions. It would only include ones that don't have final maps as of today.
That's a very valid point. And so I will amend my motion saying that it's a motion to develop an ordinance or a motion. I don't know what we need to do a moratorium, but basically to develop a moratorium.
Yeah.
That does these points that are outlined here.
And then the second one is, what about subdivisions that do have final maps? So Timber Creek's a great example that Peter brought up. Some of those, it's in different phases. I think phase 1, Brandy, correct me here. I think phase 1, which is buildings A, B, G, and H, has a final map. Whereas phase 2, which is buildings C, D, E, and F, do not. So that would need to be clarified as well. Or just leave it at just, if they have a final map, will still provide propane. But then that goes back to, I don't know that I have distribution capacity to provide propane to these new subdivisions that have final maps as well, which goes back to the capacity study. So there's a lot of issues there. So we just need to.
Well, I think that on the capacity study for that circumstance, that's something that could be done at the time that someone applies for a final map, couldn't it?
What I'm saying is, so let's just talk about Timber Creek phase 1. And Brandy hasn't chimed in here, but or Rick, I think they do have a final map for phase 1.
Oh, yeah.
They've only built 2 buildings out of that. Everything else is just empty. So those are, let's just say they're sort of analogous to an empty lot in KMA. It's an existing subdivision with a final map that's just not built yet. I don't know that I have sufficient distribution capacity in the propane lines in the system that exists there that we bought from MU to serve them. And so if they want to go build buildings A, the other half of B, G, and H, we're gonna have to have some study at some point to determine whether those 4-inch lines or 2-inch lines are sufficient to provide propane to those buildings. I don't know the answer to that now until I have a study done. I'm not a mechanical engineer. This is their wheelhouse, not mine. So that's what I'm saying for that case. For tentative maps with conditional will serves, that's easy. That's easy. And I think that's what we were first talking about. But there is this weird little, what do we do about these others that I don't know? I mean, I just don't know.
And would the study be limited to that particular extension of the system?
Quite frankly, I think I could put the burden back on the developer to say, I don't know that I have capacity here. You're going to have to do a study to tell me that these lines are sufficient to serve your subdivision before I'll provide you capacity. I think that would be amateur water. We did that a lot. You want water service? Sure. Tell me this isn't going to make your neighbor have low water pressure. Show me the study, and we did it that way. So I think there is a way to do that. I think it would just
Eric?
I want clarification, just so because I think the moratorium will come back in December, having been written based on what the motion is today for adoption. But I just need to get all these moving pieces clear in my mind.
Yeah, Eric, I just think our goals are first to say that we do not want to increase capacity of the current system. That's one of our decisions. The second isn't that we want to have people put in their own propane, that we want people to move to electricity, and we're going to make it, and our interest is in making that feasible. That's in the best interest of the community and the developer. That's the direction I think we want to move in. So I'd much rather ask staff to put together a statement of intent of those intentions and where we are moving to and where we want developers and new lots to be thinking about. And when we have enough detail to say this is how you could go about doing it, then I think it's fine to do a moratorium. But I think we should lead with what our goals are and have that be affirmed at the next board meeting.
Well, that would be in the whereases of a resolution, wouldn't it? Or couldn't it?
Well, I defer to staff to bring something together that encompasses this, and a little conversation with some of the developer communities. Let some of the contractors who think they're going to want to bid on some of this stuff just collect some more data by have a statement of intent of what direction we want to move in.
Well, I would support a draft resolution that would establish a moratorium that would include these goals. In other words, the reasoning behind the resolution. I would support that draft resolution would be for a moratorium on new connections to those subdivisions with no final map. I would support the resolution saying that there will be a moratorium on existing lots effective 2 years from the date of adoption of the resolution. And accompanying that resolution would be direction to staff to do the necessary research for a reference project. And also the finance committee and the board developing the proper incentive, rate incentive, not really incentive, but rate structure, so that all electric heating is actually economically feasible for new homes. With not, yes, with a backup of wood and so on, but that really is not what we want, I don't think, particularly. So I mean, basically, let's get something going. I think that's what the planning committee is saying. Let's get something going. And then if we can be discussed, and the resolution can be discussed, something more concrete than what's before us right now.
And more detailed, yeah.
In more detail. And then it can be either accepted or not at that point, or deferred. So how does that sound, Bertrand?
That sounds good. I appreciate your formulation of the concept, and I'm totally in agreement with that.
So this is really just directing staff to develop the appropriate resolution.
Yeah, I would like to make it a bit more truthful by saying, by making a motion about it, saying that we want to have a resolution, resolution that implement a moratorium with all the various considerations that Eric has, Eric with a K, has formulated. And yes, I agree that having goals showing up why we do that is totally fine as well. And actually, yes, should be there so people understand. And yes, we don't want to encourage people to have their own propane tank, but rather use electricity, and that's why we change the rate. And I think further than that, we need to also have some kind of incentive. They actually work great because they actually first make people think about it. And once they think about it, they are going to see the value of it. And number three, it's a one-time event. That means we are not subsidizing people for life. And I like that aspect of it. And it's a very traditional way of doing things. I mean, that's what most utilities are doing, actually.
So as I understand it now, there's a motion on the table, an amended motion or a motion from Bertrand.
Yes.
To direct staff to draft a resolution that would establish a moratorium on all new subdivisions for propane connection for all new subdivisions that do not yet have a final map. And a moratorium, and that would be effective immediately, and a moratorium on existing lots effective in 2 years.
Yeah,
that's basically it, right? That's basically it. And then we know that the staff and the board and committees and the board need to do the necessary research, as John pointed out, carry out the necessary tasks over the next year or so to see whether or not that moratorium would be effective in 2 years is actually viable. So that's what I understand the motion to be. So if that's correct, then I would like to entertain a second to that motion. Well, I will second that motion. Peter, roll call.
Sure. Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, well, that means there's some work cut out for everybody here.
Yep.
Okay, let's go on to item E, resolution 21-12, Department of Forestry and Fire Protection Agreement.
Good morning, everyone. It's Rick, the fire chief. Historically, the CDF has offered a volunteer fire department grant. It's a matching 50-50 grant that we've applied for and have received, mostly for personal protective equipment for the fire department. This year, our need is for to add another repeater, hopefully on top of chair 10, with the idea of improving the communications in some of the what we call dead zones around Kirkwood End, Carson Spur. This repeater would be essentially the Amador Fire Protection District's Command 10 channel. It actually, there's another repeater on top of Leak Springs that we're being served by right now, but if we can put the repeater on top of chair 10, a duplicate repeater on top of chair 10, again, it'll eliminate some of these dead zones for us. So I've been working with Alpine County Sheriff's Department, Amador Fire Protection District, and Battalion Chief Ryan Hamry to come up with the funding and or the equipment to put the repeater up on top of 10. And long story short, the overall price for an outside agency to come in and do the work was about $13,000. I put that request into what is now called the Rural Fire Capacity Program and was approved. And one of the requirements for the approval of the 50-50 grant is to get board resolution approved. So before you, it's resolution number 21-12. And staff's recommendation is to have this approved so we can move forward with developing this repeater on top of chair 10. I open it to any questions from the board.
Rick, we've had this kind of a grant before where the same kind of terms and so on apply.
Yes, we have.
Sounds great.
Okay, any discussion? If not, I entertain a motion for approval of resolution number 21-12.
Motion to approve.
Go ahead, John.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that. So Schroeder moved and Dornberg second.
Okay, roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornberg, aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you. That's congratulations, Rick. That's great.
Thank you. And as for housekeeping, this will need to be signed and delivered back to the state by December. So I'll trust that our clerk of the board, Jessica, will get this to you all to sign off.
Okay, and that's
coming.
for Peter and me to sign, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I will be in Kirkwood next weekend, so I can
Perfect.
meet
Thank
before
you.
next weekend, so should be able to do that.
Great.
Okay, we'll go on to item 10, General Manager's Report.
Just a couple things. It's been alluded to by multiple board members because I've talked with you all, quite a few of you about it. But Brandy and I did attend the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership 2-day conference, Zoom conference, almost entirely about heat pumps. There was some equity discussion too as well, but all the big brains were in the room there. Brandy and I asked a lot of questions, and we figured, well, Maine's colder than we are, so these should work fine. And what we found out was airflow and what those sorts of things, and our amount of snow is very different than what they have there. And so we did talk to a lot of manufacturers, and there were definitely some hiccups there for what they saw. But it was a good overall conference to hear those experts, not just lay people, and talking about it. So that was good. Made some good contacts with some vendors. And so it was a really interesting conference. So it was good to see, and I'm optimistic that heat pumps may have some viability in the future here, given our snow load, which is really the biggest issue that they saw. We did fill the accounting specialist 1 position. That new person will be starting on Monday. So we are back to full staffing levels. We did a lot of internal advertising, and people moved around, which was great. I'm glad to see people to get the opportunity to advance themselves within the district, which was one of the things from the employee survey that came back a couple of years ago. So that was nice to see people had a willingness to learn and try something new. So we're happy about that. I think that's the highlights. I did attend, I guess it's been a while since I've been able to give this. I did attend the CSDA conference as well during the Caldor fire. A lot of new things learned there that we'll be bringing back to finance. Some things we'll need to do about our leak credits, and establishing policy on waiving late charges. There's a gift of public funds concern associated with that. So the board's going to need to make some new findings if they want to keep those policies as is. So we'll be bringing that back to finance pretty soon, possibly December, maybe January. And that's really all I had.
Any questions of Eric? If not, we'll go to the operations report.
Well, actually, I have a question for Eric.
Sure.
It's on personal issues. So the question I have is, so we had a position that was defined by the personnel committee, which was a fairly supervisor position, and for electrical, and I just wonder, so we instead of hiring someone outside, we did hire someone from KMPUD, from internal hiring. And my question is, first, could you update the organization chart and make it available to the board member, including for the snow removal people for this current season? That's my first question. The second question is, so the person that has been hired, at what level has been hired? And that probably would show up in the organization chart. And the question is, and I mentioned that earlier, is with all the aging infrastructure and work that need to be done to keep our utilities running, do we have sufficient staff, or should we look at adding another position?
So to your three questions, yes, we will update the org chart. I will have Jess do that and get that out. We have not filled all the seasonal snow removals yet, so there will be some blanks on that, but I think we're up to 4, Rick, not if I'm correct, because you're on my screen. Yep, okay.
Yeah.
So I think we have 2 more to go. With regards to who we hired, we believe they are qualified and will do a great job in the supervisor position. And with regards to additional staff, I believe we are right-sized and we don't need any additional staff.
Okay.
Okay, Rick, operations report.
As Eric just mentioned, yeah, we are looking for 2 new operators. We're fortunate enough to bring back 2 returning snow removal operators, and so that's a huge benefit for us, especially for training and efficiency. And then our staff has been busy, as you can imagine, with losing some time with the Caldor fire and with the weather. Our staff has been extremely busy trying to complete normal seasonal activities, and then dealing with some new things that have popped up recently, which it's a scramble. And we're not alone. Everybody's working hard, long days to get ready for winter. And we hope that it's going to be a real great winter, of course. Other than that, the fire department's on a really strong uptick right now. I've got a lot of really capable volunteers, and so it's really fun to train with more than just 4 people at a particular meeting. But we will be offering a EMT class for our firefighters as well as district staff this winter, and the instructor who's on the fire department is also willing to offer classes for the community in the future. So I will certainly announce that in the future as well. Other than that, that's the end of my report, unless there's any questions from the board.
Hey, Rick, you may want to mention that we have a firefighter that may benefit from our pilot program for reimbursement of tuition that we're going to be developing. We've told him to save his receipts and maybe add anything on that, Rick.
Yeah, one of our firefighters who was here throughout the Caldor fire and Tamarack fire had heard about this potential scholarship program, and so he's enrolled in the EMT class at the Lake Tahoe Community College, and we'll complete the class right around the time that we're going to bring the 501c3 committee back for final approval for this pilot scholarship program. But he's very excited, and hearing that there would be this program coming up is one of the reasons why he decided to take the class now and not wait until next year. So
that's fantastic. That's great
for the fire department.
That's great. That's really great.
I think the only thing we had left was Brandy was going to update on the propane meter sheds.
Yes, I did put in an update in the packet. Just wanted to let everyone know that we did send out the reminder notice on October 28th. That was the reminder to all of the customers who had medium or higher ratings on either their electric or propane meters, letting them know that the deadline was approaching for either completing the work or signing the agreement. They were informed that the deadline for construction was delayed, but the agreement deadline was staying the same. And I've put the totals here as of November 9th. As you can imagine, we've been getting lots of calls and correspondence on residential we're up to 62 customers who've returned the agreement. So quite a few more in the 3 days since. We still have 54 customers who have, or I'm sorry, we have 3 additional ones ready for inspection. So there are still a few customers that have done neither. Those customers will be contacted again on Monday, the 15th, if we haven't gotten anything by then. And they will be posted and notices mailed that we're starting the shut-off procedure that's outlined in Ordinance 2101. For commercial and condominium HOAs, we still have 6 customers that are in the outstanding box. I've talked to almost everybody. There's quite a few more that are working on getting the agreement signed or working on getting construction completed. But I just wanted to update the board on how this is going and where we're going to be next week.
Brandy, is your sense we're going to end up shutting some people off?
Yes. I'm hoping it's not going to be very many because we got quite a lot of response from this push. I expect that the next push will elicit a response also. But I do think that there will be customers that do not respond and are shut off.
You have an idea of how many?
It's hard to say. You know, we're getting a lot of responses right at the deadline. I can't say how many we'll end up with.
And I will add that we did send out certified return receipt letters to all as well. So we've emailed, we've called, we've sent certified return receipts as well. So everyone's been put on notice. I mean, well over 6 months.
Okay. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
Standing committee reports, finance. John?
Yeah, we've got a number of items that we're following up on with regards to the electric rate structure. And the plan there is we're going to evaluate a number of these, like the one we talked about today, you know, what's going to be the way to make electric heat financially attractive for new developments and such. We're going to deal with those on an individual basis, and then we'll look to batch those up for a public hearing perhaps in February, so they can be implemented for the next calculations for the following year. So that's a number of items that are going to go on between now and February. The other item is we have an inquiry into the USDA RUS regarding did they receive their funding that'll allow us to move forward with the wastewater treatment plant. We haven't heard back from them, but that inquiry was made this week, and we expect to hear back in the early next week.
I think I apologize if you weren't, John, but I think you were copied, but we've also been providing additional updated financials to USDA as requested. There's been a flurry of emails this week. We got asked for an update last week, and then this week's been a flurry of information Kelly's been providing to our USDA rep.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, John. Operations, Peter?
We haven't met. We're going to meet in 2 weeks.
Planning, Bertrand?
So planning, we talk about moratorium, so that's down. The other topic we talk about was trying to look at potential site for EV charging, and it's too early to expand there. So there are a bunch of possibilities. And number 3, we discuss about the issue of improving our electrical infrastructure so we can reduce our losses. And it turned out that it is going to be very expensive endeavor, and in no way the PGC fund would be adequate to address that issue. And so it's clearly something that would need to be tackled at capital budgeting. And and I think that's it. Eric, did I miss something?
Yes, and I'm trying to remember what. I know we were kind of bouncing around on that. Let me just look real quick. We talked about public benefit charge, talked about EV charging, propane use shifting. We talked about that, which is the recommendation that came out. Yeah, I think that's it. And then we do have biomass coming back to planning next week.
That's for the next one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Communications, Bob?
The main activity we have coming up is the first of the fire safety seminars that we're going to do quarterly. So that's this coming Thursday at noon. And we'll send out a reminder. I assume Jess will do that on Monday, Eric?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's it.
Great.
And reminder to sign up. If you got your email, there is a sign up in there. So please do so. The more participation, the better, especially look good to have as many board members there as we can.
How much response do you get so far?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to check with Jess, but when I send out the org chart, I can tell you how many people have signed up so far at that time. That's something I can take care of Monday.
And personnel will meet on Monday, this coming Monday.
Yes.
So we're reporting in December. Okay, and the temporary advisory committee reports. Is there anything on the festival yet?
The festival committee did. I did see a draft report come through. I think it's just for Rick's final review, and then that should come to the board in December.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
It was pretty long. It was pretty thorough. I think it was about 4 pages, but very thorough.
Really well done. We really appreciate the effort behind the scenes there.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Actually, I have a suggestion for the playground ad hoc committee, temporary committee.
That committee's gone, by the way, Bertrand. It doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist anymore, but there's still some, basically, maybe I can wait at the discussion to do my point.
Sure, let's go to general discussion. Bertrand.
Yes, so the general discussion point here is currently there is this parking shed that is mostly used in winter, which is behind the Lava Rock employee building, which is mostly used for storing playground equipment. And it's a misuse of that space. And since there is still fund in that playground fundraising that was done last year or the year before, I suggest that it's time now for the playground to try to find a storage solution, maybe build a shed somewhere to be defined where, so we can actually, so the PUD can access this valuable space, especially in the light of future EV charging that would really benefit from snow shaded space. So, so this is my sort of proposal here, is to make that something is devised so we store somewhere else various playground equipment than in this parking space that is behind the Lava Rock employee building.
Okay, any other general discussion items? If not, then we will adjourn the meeting, and our next scheduled meeting is for Friday, December 10th. And note
there is Howard that had a comment.
Oh, there was another. I'm sorry. Oh, there's Howard. Okay, Howard.
Yeah, thank you. So during the development of the electric rates, we heard that we were constrained by the need to have the same rate per kilowatt hour for the ski area as for residential. And so I've actually got some good news on that. Eric Christensen sent me the agreement, and I reviewed it, and he directed me to section 6.02, service obligations. And under B, what it says is, unless otherwise approved by KMR in writing, buyer shall charge KMR, which of course this now applies to Vail, no rate, fee, or any other charge based on total price per kilowatt used. Okay, it doesn't say per kilowatt hour. It says per kilowatt. So what that means is that demand charges, which is the more customary way of accounting for capacity charges for commercial rates, could be used in place of the EDU system that was developed. And so what I would like to ask the board to do to agendize for the next board meeting would be an evaluation or discussion of the possibility of changing the electric rate structure to one that would include a demand charge based on kilowatts.
Okay.
Any questions?
No. Appreciate the suggestion, Howard. Okay, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting. And just note that the next meeting is for Friday, not a Saturday, and it's at 1 p.m. in the afternoon rather than at 8 a.m. So Friday, December 10th at 1 p.m. Thanks, everybody. This meeting's adjourned.
See you there.
Okay, bye-bye.